Welcome back to At the Beach, the official podcast of Cal State Long Beach. I'm Dan Montoya, Vice President for University Relations and Development. Today's episode is very special. We are not in the studio, as obvious. We're coming to you from the deck of the historic USS Iowa, also known as the Battleship of Presidents, and affectionately nicknamed the Big Stick. Docked just across the harbor from Long Beach and San Pedro, she's a proud symbol of American naval history. Joining me today is Mike Getscher, the Iowa's Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, and a proud CSULB alum. Mike earned his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering in 1992. Since then, he has an impressive career. He was Director of Operations at Ice Energy, the Director of Facilities and Life Support at Aquarium of the Pacific, and now leads operations here aboard the Iowa. Mike also served as the Executive Director of the Historic Naval Ships Association, and an international nonprofit that supports museum ships like this one. As a member of the Long Beach community and a Navy veteran himself, I'm thrilled to be here today. Mike, thanks for having us, and welcome to At the Beach.
Dan, thanks a lot for having me. It's really wonderful to be here. I'm a product of Long Beach. Most people wouldn't know that here, but born and raised there, and every school that I ever went to was in Long Beach, from the youngest age you can think of all the way up through Cal State. So thrilled to be here and happy to talk.
You know, that's not uncommon. I run across a lot of great people in Long Beach that grew up here, they got educated here, and they stayed, and they contribute to the community in such an amazing way. And that's what I love about Long Beach, is that you have people who know the history, who've seen it grow and develop. So that's pretty awesome.
What's fun for me too, by the way, is that it was known as Iowa by the Sea for many years.
Really?
Yeah, my
Okay.
dad, actually my mom and dad both came from the Midwest, right next door to Iowa in Omaha. So
Yeah,
it's kind of
that's
fun.
awesome. And we just saw some people from Iowa come here. That's pretty special.
They get in free.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the USS Iowa's past history. Can you give us a quick overview of the ship's history? Maybe highlight some of its most significant moments during World War II or the Korean War and beyond.
First off, I'd say that most people don't understand that the first half of the last century was really the battleship era.
Right.
You know, everybody was vying to build them. Entire international treaties were written around battleships because they were so expensive and so threatening. So big deal. This particular ship was designed in the 1930s, basically Depression era, and approved under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president at the time.
Right.
Right now, in fact, we have aboard the ship his great-grandson, Hall Roosevelt, is our director of sales and marketing.
Wow,
So
that's
it's really
amazing.
a neat connection. She was first commissioned in 43, and the first thing she did was to do what we call the Tirpitz Watch. The Tirpitz was the sister ship to the German battleship Bismarck. So it's kind of a threat. So did that for a little while, and then she came back to the coast and then brought FDR and pretty much the entire leadership of the administration
Right.
all the way across to North Africa for the Tehran conference with Stalin and Churchill.
Yeah.
And on the way back, of course, at that conference, they talked about any number of things, including post-war and also what were we going to do about invasion of Europe.
Right.
And so the first D-Day conversations, without question, occurred aboard this vessel on the way back from North Africa. Following that, she served in the Pacific doing the island hopping campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was the radio ship in about, as I understand it, about 1,000 yards away from the USS Missouri, where the surrender was actually taking place. So this vessel transmitted the surrender across the airwaves. And but post-war, she was retired, I think 1948 or thereabouts.
Okay.
Of course, the Korean War, she was recommissioned. She spent many months in the gun line with her sister ships and frankly fired more rounds during that conflict than during World War II. After the war there, she kind of just stuck around training midshipmen, doing these general cruises, hosted a lot of leadership throughout the years, and then decommissioned in 58. And then during the Reagan era, she was recommissioned in 1984 and served in what I would call the Cold War era. So decommission lasted 1990. So just an amazing history. She served 3 eras and traveled a lot of miles.
That's amazing. I love how you talk about the ship as a living, breathing thing, because that's what it is, right? You know, for many, many years, there's so many sailors who've come and gone, and she's seen so many amazing things throughout the year.
Yeah, we think of it the same way too. We're the fourth crew,
Right.
and it's on its fourth commissioning.
Yeah.
And frankly, this is going to be a very long commissioning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her retired service as a museum ship, as a memorial, as really an icon for not just the Navy, but for the sailors and all the work that was done. It's an amazing place to work, frankly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the Iowa is clearly a proud fixture here in Long Beach in the San Pedro community.
Mhm.
How was the ship? How has the ship evolved into the culture, an educational hub, and what importance do you see it having in the local residents and visitors?
I think of it this way: you can't really exist in a vacuum.
Right.
You just can't. You have
Yeah.
to establish social capital, I think is the term. In fact, I give credit to Dr. Schubel, whom I worked for at the aquarium. He mentioned that to me once. So we're really involved in the community. We have any number of nonprofits who we allow them to use the space aboard the ship.
Right.
Alcoholics Anonymous, the Chamber. We have any number of places that come down and work. But we're also partners with the Port of Los Angeles. We're kind of integrated into port operations. We're co-founders with the Port of LA, all of our friends there, for LA Fleet Week, which
Yeah.
is a huge regional
It's
event.
amazing. Yeah.
Just in front of the ship alone, you can see upwards of 50,000 people during that weekend. We also do a tremendous amount of training, and it probably wouldn't be seen. In fact, Long Beach Fire Department has been here to do training down
Okay.
inside of our ship. We work incredibly closely with the other law enforcement and first responder groups throughout the region. First name basis with Chief Villanueva at LA Fire Department.
Yeah.
First name basis with LA Port Police Chief Gazy, Captain McGuire at the LAPD Harbor Division. We work with them really closely. And then we also are engaged in something that most people wouldn't know about either, which is it's called DISCA. That's the acronym. There's
Yeah.
acronyms throughout our
That's
lives here.
for everything.
Defense Support of Civil Authorities. So, in the event of an earthquake around here, um, DISCA would be enacted essentially,
Right.
and the local community would be able to access some of the vessels or the manpower from the military region. So there's a lot of partnerships here. We're very tightly engaged with all of that. Even this last week, we had the tsunami alert, and that little system kind of ramped up, and we all talked to each other and made sure that we were going to be safe. And it's part of who we are and what we
Yeah,
do
and
here.
and I don't think people would realize that or even understand how you play a role in that. So I'm glad you shared that because it's so important because we don't know what earthquakes or what's going to happen far away, but to be a part of that in that emergency response is amazing.
Yeah.
So are there specific collaborations or connections between the USS Iowa and Cal State Long Beach? And have CSULB students, faculty, or programs been involved in any educational preservation efforts?
So I'm not aware of anything specific as
Okay.
far as a program goes. Certainly, without question, we've had CSULB grads here. Certainly, I'm one, and there's been others as well.
Yeah.
A lot of our education efforts in the past have been really focused on younger folks, the grade schools and the high schools. And
Yeah.
one thing I can share that's still amazing to me, having grown up in Long Beach, there are so many kids here in the local region which have never even seen the water.
Yeah.
So to come down to the ship is an amazing experience for them. We have an overnight program for any kind of youth groups, very organized, of course, up to 200 bunks, and they do a history evening, and then, of course, sleep aboard the ship. And
Yeah.
there's any number of other events that occur down here as well. Another university, USC, has been doing an annual a day of service here,
Okay.
so would be happy to talk with Cal State about it
Yeah. A
too. I
day of
think it's
service sounds
wonderful.
good to me.
Yeah, just they bring down 40 or 50 people, and
Yeah.
we always need help. So we're all about that. We're 90% volunteer here aboard the ship.
Oh, that's awesome. So, talking about Cal State Long Beach, talk to us a little bit about your time there, and, you know,
So I had kind of an interesting journey, I guess. I actually went to Long Beach City College first,
okay.
picked up a degree, and then went off and did some work in the diesel mechanics world. But I was kind of disappointed. I wanted more.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking as I worked in Gardena one day, what about marine engineering? Not even sure how it came out. Next thing I knew, I was at a friend's house looking at the old catalogs he used to have. They're like an inch thick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure, it's all online now, but 1 inch thick thing, and I sifted through it. And they had ocean engineering. They didn't have marine engineering.
Wow.
And I remember the teacher still there. But basically, I thought I want to do that. So I looked at the catalog, pretty intimidating, and decided to get back to school.
Right.
And so I first went to Long Beach City again to
Okay.
catch up on my math and, pre-calc and calculus and chemistry and all that kind of stuff, and then matriculated up to Cal State. And I was on what I call the 7-year program, 2 years at Long Beach City and then 5 years at Cal State.
Yeah.
I did really well initially academically. I was in Pi Tau Sigma, just had a good time. But pretty soon I was working full time
Right.
too,
Right.
you know, and so very proud of the fact that I put myself through school.
Yeah.
And then one of the major events I think for me up at Cal State was that um, they've owned a research vessel for years. It's called the research vessel Yellowfin,
Yeah.
still in existence. It's about 2,000 yards over this way,
Right.
and they had a job opening. And at the time, it was operated by Dr. Murray and the Ocean Studies Institute. And I ended up going over there, picking up a part-time job on top of the other job. And that was my initial foray into the maritime world, and ultimately leading to me obtaining uh, an officer's license in the United States Merchant Marine as an engineer.
Can you give some advice to an engineering student who's studying engineering, or even a student at Cal State Long Beach? Like my son, he's transferring to Cal State Long Beach. He's going to study engineering as well. But a lot of times engineers think it's a, traditional job, like you go work for some manufacturing company or some, but you took a very interesting direction,
If
and the knowledge that you learned, you know it enhanced or educated you as a person, but it gave you all the skills to understand naval vessels and everything else, but then you learned so many other things along the way. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's kind of curious. Originally, I was a mechanic, and then, of course, I went to Cal State. To me, the engineering program gave you a foundation.
Right, right,
I don't use calculus or
right.
differential equations now, and
Yeah,
I remember having kind of a fear of that. I didn't want to just sit in an office somewhere,
right.
but it provided that fundamental knowledge on, for me, corrosion and mechanics and structural items and just the calculations behind it. So you understand it, and then I ended up in some ways in almost an engineering management position,
Right.
you know, and so it's a much different animal.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say, you don't really know what your path will be. I mean, to me, it's still a surprise.
Yeah.
I've got 1,000 days of sea time. I would never have guessed that when I was at Cal State Long Beach,
Right.
but, you know, it's very cool. Um, but there's other things to learn out there. Probably the one or two things that I would say that you should really focus on once you get out of school, or perhaps even in school, focus on people,
Yeah.
because that's really the key.
Yeah.
You can't get anywhere without having those relationships. And the other thing that was perhaps a surprise for me was communication. I write all the time. Being able to communicate is something I didn't really learn at Cal State per se, although certainly you have all those
Sure.
opportunities. But for me, it was really about reading as a young person, you know, as a boy and as a young man. I loved reading, and it allowed me to develop a little bit of writing skills. I now communicate to 600 people every week, you know, and that's the amazing and perhaps the one surprising thing. So focus on people and learn how to communicate, because if you can't communicate your ideas, you can't really, it's hard to get places.
Yeah,
You know,
I
it's
100%
powerful.
agree. 100%
Yeah,
agree. I think you're and everything you said is what I share with folks, right? It's the education you get gives you a foundation, teaches you how to think, and you should be able to write and speak and communicate, network, and
sure.
all those things you mentioned is so valuable. So I'm so glad you said that. So how can the university interact with the USS Iowa? What are ways that maybe, again, you talked about a service opportunity, but how else can we interact with you and maybe just build some connections?
The amazing thing I think about this place is our volunteer corps. We see between 50 and 60,000 hours of volunteer time
Okay.
every year. We have volunteers literally in every department, including accounting, IT, certainly in my purview, engineering and operations, events, I mean, you name it, even communications. During Fleet Week, we had a whole team of people
Yeah.
that worked on that. So engaging with us in that way is a huge benefit for everybody. It's just
Right.
an amazing experience. Challenging at times too,
Sure.
but still, we have to do that here. There's no way to really support that kind of staff.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we've always been 90% volunteer, 10% paid staff. So I've been fortunate to be here for it coming up on 14 years since I first stepped aboard her. But that's probably one of the major ways to do that.
So if people wanted to volunteer, how would they go about doing it?
On our website, we have links, and or you reach out through you, and I'll get
Okay.
in touch with people. We do have a training program for the basics, you know, safety and so forth, and then we try to align people with their interests. We have the tour department gives tours. We have people with an engineering background providing engineering tours on weekends,
Okay.
very extensive 2.5 hour tours, wandering through the ship, stem to stern, literally from the anchor windlass room, which is beneath our feet here,
Sure.
all the way back to steering gear. So those are the fun things to do. The engineering slash operations team, we maintain the vessel, we deal with paint, we deal with hull maintenance. We have electrical systems, but you really have to understand that. It's not something you just do coming off the street. We have mooring lines that we have to take. Each one of these ropes that tie the ship to the dock costs $7,500. And there's 14 of them, and we have to tighten them up once in a while. So there's all kinds of opportunity here to bring people aboard and engage them and become part of the community, which is really what this is.
So, um, building off of that, we raise money for the university for many different opportunities, and I know to maintain this ship is not cheap.
Mm-mm.
So, how can people in the community support you? Give philanthropy to support the efforts that you guys are doing? Because I think this is an amazing piece of history because this was a huge naval base at one time. And it's also part of the fabric of what is Long Beach now, and I want to see it here for years and years to come. So, how could people support you?
Well, first off, I'd like to say there's a misconception out there. People tend to think or just assume that we're supported by the government in
Right,
some way. We're not.
right, right.
The Navy literally gave us the ship, and they have a little hook in the contract says, "Oh, if you want it back, we'll take it back."
Yeah,
But they don't provide any money at all.
right.
The state has provided some very specific funding under a grant system for construction on the dock for something, but overall, we support ourselves, as we like to say. We what we kill.
Yeah,
I'd say that roughly 30% of our budget is all from what we call gate proceeds, the gate people coming in. 40% is donation. Of course, we have other things, retail opportunities. We have a hot dog stand back aft.
okay.
There's other opportunities. But donation is a wonderful way to do that. And
Yep.
we have great links on our website, of
Okay.
course, for that. So always we need help. We are not supported by any form of government. Uh, just the power alone here, my electrical bill, not as much as it was at the aquarium,
Yeah.
but still pretty significant at, upwards of $30,000 a month. So
Oh, wow.
we run a business.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
happens to be a nonprofit. As my favorite people that I've learned from in the past said, no margin, no mission.
Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
can't support the institution, you can't take care of the people and the things that you're trying to get done.
Yeah.
So that's the powerful part of it. I think you really have to understand that.
Yeah, no, I encourage folks if you're listening to, come here and visit, but also contribute because, again, it takes a lot of maintenance to keep this. But what we don't understand is this is history here. It's a uh priceless commodity. It's a priceless vessel that you can't put money behind all the things that this ship has been
It's
through.
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge to do things to maintain her and also keep the original fabric.
Yeah.
I think, in fact, I've written, it's almost a 20-page document now just on
Okay.
the different issues surrounding, the preservation,
Yeah.
the restoration, and the
Right.
maintenance of it.
Right.
It's really, frankly, complex. We have a contract with the Navy. We have a lease with the Port of Los Angeles. We have relationships with the LA Fire Department. We deal with the State Historic Preservation Office to a degree, pretty lightly. But there's any number of different jurisdictions that we have to address and,
Yeah.
and deal with. And I like to think about things. This is an artifact. When you think of an artifact as a museum, one of the things that come to mind, or two things perhaps that I like to use in my examples, are the Mona Lisa, which is in the Louvre,
Right.
and also the Wright Flyer, which is in Air and Space Museum, I think on the mall still,
Yeah.
and back in DC. And those are artifacts, and we conserve those artifacts, and we just keep them when we look at them.
Yep.
But we don't go flying in the Wright Flyer. We don't hang the Mona Lisa on our
That's
our
right.
our
That's right.
our door. But if you look at the White House, for example, that's a little bit different. Started I think in late 1700s, completed in 1800,
Yeah.
burned once in 1814. She's not an artifact. Back in the 40s, she was pretty much gutted. There's a great picture of a bulldozer inside the main floor of the White House. And so you're always balancing the needs for the growth and utilization of the ship. We live on this thing and work on it,
Right.
while trying to retain the fabric that we have. And we also have to respect some new technologies. And I'll give you a great example. Some years ago, we did some research on teak deck. Of course, these ships is a capital ship in the Navy's parlance. it had teak decking, and
Right.
often 3 or 4 inches thick in some areas. Teak is incredibly expensive, and now it's illegal to cultivate or to cut down in Myanmar, formerly Burma.
Really?
And there's something known as blood teak, which is exactly what you might think it is, where
Mm.
there's violence associated with the procurement of teak.
Wow.
And although there are some other resources for teak for potential restoration of the deck, they're rather immature and they cause problems. So we ended up looking at the new products that the cruise ships are using.
Yeah.
It's called Herculon. It's a synthetic teak material. It's a substitute, and it'll keep us going for decades
Yeah.
now. And so we transitioned to the newer technology. We retain the appearance, the feel, the look of what we did,
Right.
but we can't just go and rape and pillage on trees
Of
just to.
course.
I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't make any
It doesn't make
economic
sense.
sense,
Yeah, for sure.
little and certainly environmental and social. So we shifted. And in fact, if you before you leave today, take a look at our O1 level deck. We just had a press conference this week, and
Okay.
we opened it up and did 5,000 square feet of deck. Very expensive,
Yeah, I bet.
$750,000. So, but still, uh, that kind of gives you in a nutshell that weird balance we have to do, maintaining original fabric, but we have to adapt a little bit too. And so
Yeah.
respecting that is really the core issues.
So, what's the future vision of the ship? I mean, obviously, there's going to continue to be an important fabric of Long Beach, but what's your vision for the ship?
We want to continue to grow and maintain what we have, I think. And certainly maintaining the ship is a huge thing. These ships were only meant to last for 20 or 30 years.
Right.
And here we are at over 80 now.
Yeah, that's
So,
amazing.
that's always going to be the marine priority. And we can't easily dry dock this vessel either. So we're always going to be working on that type of maintenance in the water and so forth. But we'd like to just expand beyond that, the social capital that we
Yeah.
have and become even more integrated and help even more throughout the community in every way we can. So it really is about us being a part of the community here. It's
Talk
frank.
to
I can't imagine doing anything but.
Yeah, talk to us about the signature events that you do here, like Fleet Week, and when do those happen, and
So
when
Fleet Week is
frequently?
big. Probably another large event. We do have a fundraising event in October. It's our gala.
Okay.
Over the years, there's been any number of things either here or right in front of us. Cirque du Soleil has been out here in the parking lot.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah.
Has been back. Even American Ninja Warrior was out here and filmed, and so that's kind of
Okay.
wild.
Okay.
We do a lot of, not a lot, but we do quite a bit of filming. We've had any number of things. Those are not open to the public, by the way. We've landed a helicopter on the fantail.
Yeah.
And then we just have the normal range of private and commercial events throughout. We have the Iowa by the Sea picnic here every year still. So it's just what I would call a standard range. Even at the aquarium, we did similar things. I was there for 6 years.
Yeah.
I was there the day we opened, just the
Right.
day we opened here
Oh
too.
my gosh.
But yeah, I don't know how it all kind of happened that way. But so we do all kinds of things like that. And the Transpac kickoff party has been here for the last 2 sessions. It's
Wow.
every other year. There's always something going on. Keep an eye out on the website. You'll find things. It's really cool.
That's good. Do you guys still do um exercises with the Navy?
So we've done a few things with them, but not too much. It's really more about the first responders locally.
Okay. Okay.
We have things called comrails, community relations events here sometimes. Oftentimes, the Navy chiefs,
Oh, okay.
prospective chiefs, as they're coming up through the ranks and they're going to be anointed as a chief, they'll come out in a group of 20, 30, 40 people and they'll perform service for a weekend. So we do things like that
That's
quite a bit. But again, the Navy doesn't provide money or things like that. But we chat with them, and my boss sometimes heads back to the Pentagon at times. We work with Chinfo, the
okay.
chief of naval information, which is kind of like their PR
Yeah.
side. So, and
That's
there's a few recruiting things, but overall, it's not as direct as you might think.
so you stayed in the realm of you know ships and vessels and merchant marine and so on and so. What inspires you to keep doing it?
I found probably two things. I want to add value. This
Okay.
is now my 26th year in nonprofits.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Hancock Institute for Marine Studies at USC, the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, was there for 6 years, 14 years here. Adding value and doing something that is real
Yeah.
is really important to me. And then I've just been fascinated by the things I've been involved with. Ice Energy was green energy. It was thermal storage. Loved it. 6 years there.
Right.
The aquarium was amazing. Again, there the day we opened in 1998. This thing has been an incredible journey for
Yeah.
14 years for me. So I tend to gravitate towards a little bit of adventure and excitement. I've got 1,000 days of sea time. I've roamed around the world, a year in the Mediterranean, a year in the Gulf,
Amazing.
2 transatlantics, a trans-Pacific, as far west as Guadalcanal. I've always been doing something exciting,
That's
and
awesome.
I think that's really key to who I am.
That's awesome. Well, we're gonna wrap it up, but I brought a challenge coin that I created for Cal State Long Beach for our veterans. So I want to share that with you.
Thank
And
you.
we want to thank you for hosting us today. Jeff and I were talking about like just getting in the community, and this is our first one that we can really come in and let people know about all the other things that are happening in addition to Cal State Long Beach. So we want to thank you and thank your staff for hosting us today. And also, I want to give a special shout out to Hall Roosevelt, Director of Sales and Marketing, for helping us coordinate all that. And we really appreciate you.
No, thank you. I love being here and talking about it. There's a lot of us beach people out here.
Yeah,
We're just kind of quiet, get
that's
things
good.
done. So
Well, I also want to thank my staff, Sully and Jeff, for putting this together. We hope you enjoy it, and this has been a treat for us. And come and see the USS Iowa, get to know it, and all the great things that it has to offer. And we like to close our podcast with a Go Beach on 3.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
go beach.